Get ready to listen, learn, and earn CE hours. This podcast features content from an accredited CE activity provided by Calibri Healthcare. Visit elitelearning.com/podcasts for accreditation and disclosure statements and instructions on how you may be able to earn CE credits.
One thing that I think is an important component of all of this is we all have strengths that we bring to the team. And so often we focus on our deficits, and we need to spend way more time focused on our strengths and making them even stronger, because that's where we find our joy, and that's what our teammates see.
Hello and welcome to our third and final episode in our Collaboration Skills series. I'm Leanna McGuire, your host for this Elite Learning podcast, and joining me again are Kathy Scott and Bridget Sarikas, co-authors of the book Stupid Gone Viral. Welcome back.
Love being here.
Thank you.
This is good stuff. We're going to talk today about something that's really important with collaboration. Well, you can tell me just how important it is. Let's talk about feedback.
Oh, I'll give you some feedback. You're doing a really good job here.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I was scared for a minute there.
That's what happens with feedback,
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Just the moment you hear someone say, I want to give you some feedback, you like tense up, hold your breath, and think,
Yes.
here we go.
It's truth.
Which is sad. But feedback is really important for any of us if we want to continue to improve the way we lead and the way we live. And so we need feedback, and not just negative, but we need that too. And we'll call it negative feedback today. But we also need feedback on things that we're doing well and our strengths and the specifics that go with it. So we'll talk about all of that.
Good.
Yeah, I think feedback, it is an art in how to give it effectively. But I think what's so important is to make sure that you both feel comfortable in that situation. That's really critical because when you're uncomfortable, it comes across really negatively. Everybody feels bad. You walk out of the room. It's awful. And I think the other thing that's really critical is to make it as real time as possible. Because quite often we give these feedback, these annual reviews, they're a year later, they've forgotten, all the good that probably did happen. So the closer to real time you can give that feedback, the better.
Yeah.
So the fact that we tense up when someone says, can I give you some feedback? Does that speak to the fact that we are given more negative feedback than positive? And that's why that expectation?
So. Or maybe it just takes us back to when we were kids, my dad, Kathy Annette. I'm like, oh, get up here. Yeah, I'm not sure, but it certainly sets that up in me, that kind of a response. And I think it's helpful to talk to each other about that, to say, yeah, giving feedback can be difficult, or I have an aversion to it, or I'm trying to give better feedback to my team, and I'm really working hard at this. All of those are good things to say to sort of break the ice and help people see that giving feedback is really important, and it is an art, and you do need to work at it to do it effectively.
Yeah. I think it can be, I think when we look at negative feedback, I think it could be more constructive, right? I mean, you may have done something that didn't get the desired results, but you can be very constructive in that feedback rather than always being so negative. And I think we are conditioned to a certain degree. I had a supervisor one time who said, when I was giving a review of someone, they said, well, at least make sure you put down 4 negative things because we don't want them to have a perfect review. And I said, but they didn't do anything incorrect. I mean, they were fine, it was very much a technical skill. So it was like, but they were fine. Well, we can't have a review like that. So there is a lot of that conditioning that's out there, and we got to get rid of that kind of thinking.
Boy,
Yeah.
that's it. I don't think you're alone in that. There's certainly been, annual reviews are 1 to 5, but nobody gets a 5.
Right.
I bet you can't give anybody a 5, and you're thinking, well, why? I don't understand.
Right.
Yeah. Good point. Well, I would like to talk about some skills that can help us give that negative feedback. But I also, before we do that, can we talk about the importance of the positive feedback and what the result of that can be when giving it to people?
Positive feedback is so powerful. So when you see someone do something well, or you see a strength in someone, so often we don't give them feedback on that. So one of the ways to really boost your team is to genuinely say, I want to give you some feedback on your performance yesterday. You were amazing. And here's what I saw that made such a difference. So you have to get specific. Otherwise, it's just like a
nice
way to go, pat on the back, which is nowhere near as powerful as saying, when you stood up and looked at so-and-so and asked that question, it changed the conversation. That was really powerful. Do more of that. And
yes,
end your conversation with do more of that. And it just is a motivator. And people remember it for years.
Wow, I'll give you some positive feedback on that. I'll give you a high 5 even. How's that? Yeah, that was good. Absolutely. Bridget, you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, I was just going to say, Kathy mentioned, the energy and everything that comes from that. And you really want individuals to want to come into work every day. And the energy you create from that positive feedback just gives them that motivation to say, you know what, I can come back again. I can do that. Now that that individual, that leader, whoever, they saw me and they really appreciated what I did. And boy, that's just a huge motivator.
Yeah, if you heard statements like that on a regular basis, when someone said to you, I'd like to give you some feedback, you're more likely to get excited than to cower.
Yes.
Yes.
Right? Wouldn't it be beautiful?
Yes.
It's a beautiful thing.
And my assumption is that would decrease retention, would it not? With people, if all you ever heard was negative, that's not exactly inspiring to stick around.
No. And people want to feel valued wherever they are. And if you're just giving them negative feedback all the time, they're going to move on. It's just too difficult today to be in those kinds of environments when there's just so much chaos in the world and so many other opportunities. So look at your turnover rates. And if they're not where you want them to be, we're talking about some skills that could really help bring that down and retain your valuable employees.
Nice. Yeah.
Excellent. I think we also forget that we can do that peer to peer. It's really helpful when you see that someone did something and you say, wow, I'd like to be able to do that. That was amazing how you conveyed that message or whatever. That is where you have the influence as well. So peer to peer is really important in that feedback arena.
Yeah, because I think oftentimes we see something and we think, oh, that's really great, but we don't verbalize that, to the person. Yeah, I think that's really important. Okay, let's get to it. Negative feedback. There are ways to deliver that, right? I mean, we have to give that feedback in order for people to grow and improve, but there are ways, right?
Yes, there are ways. One of the most important things is to give feedback about someone's behavior, not their character, not their values. So, and when you give feedback about behavior, you need to describe it and the impact it had. So you're not just saying, I didn't like that. You're saying, when you did this, the other person immediately shut down. And then go on to give them some constructive ways to move forward, or tell them, I want you to work on this, and I'm willing to help you with this, or whatever. But it's not just a slap and don't do that again. So identify the behavior and the consequences of the behavior, and then talk about some alternatives. That's a good way to go about it.
And I think sometimes it's good to take each other outside of the environment. So instead of coming to my office, I'm going to have this conversation with you where everybody's already on edge. Let's go grab a cup of coffee and sit down and have a conversation that leads to that very constructive feedback. You are talking about what got you there, and how they can go about improving. But sometimes when you give it in a little bit more of a relaxed environment, people tend to hear it because you want them to hear the message. You really want them to listen because they do need to improve, and you want to give them that opportunity. So I think the more relaxed that environment can be, the better they will hear.
Good point.
That's an investment in them, and you want to make sure they end the meeting feeling that way, or the encounter, I guess I would say, but do it privately.
Yeah. Like you care.
Right.
Genuinely care. Is it okay to have a third person in the room if it's someone that you've had past experience with who didn't handle feedback well? Or does it depend on the situation?
It could be. It's also, though, would be helpful to ask. I mean, if someone really messed up and you feel like you need to address it, to say to them, boy, yesterday didn't go well. Can you tell me from your view of the world what was going on? Let them start, because often, I mean, I've had this happen to me. And I'll say, yeah, boy, I was really off. And then you can get them to talk about it and identify some solutions. So that's another helpful way to get somebody to hear the message, but participate in the conversation. So it's not parent to kid. It's more a collaborative conversation around how can we do this better.
Right.
So that's another skill that can be rehearsed, practiced, and then try it out.
Yeah, that's where role playing can really come in handy, because it can be awkward as you're learning to give that kind of behavior, and especially for new individuals who are having to do their first review. I mean, there's so much anxiety. I hear a lot of young people, oh my gosh, I have to do a review today. I don't even know where to start. I don't know how to begin. And there are some negative components to it. So really helping them, with that role playing very early on can be very helpful.
Nice. Very good. Okay. So it's important to be able to deliver both. And is this something, negative feedback, is this also something that can be done peer to peer?
Absolutely. I mean, we all play a part in this, and especially if you have a good relationship with someone, your feedback the intent of feedback is to help someone become more excellent.
Yeah.
Help someone succeed. And when you're going about it for that reason, it's usually pretty obvious. People know that, versus I'm mad at you and I'm going to give you some feedback. Don't do that. You wait until you can get your head in a better space. And also think about it. Part of this feedback thing is I have to be able to take feedback too. And put yourself in your shoes. So it's a two-way street.
Yeah. So receiving feedback, tips on that.
Cool. Bridget, tips on receiving.
Well, again, I think you have to first have your own vulnerability present, right? Receiving feedback, you have to be open to hearing that. Take that anxiety down a bit. but then say, maybe I could have done that better, right? And even when you leave that session, really think about it. Don't get mad, right? I mean, think about, I just got told something that, gosh, I need to work on, and go back to a colleague or someone else and say, did you see that as well? Gosh, how can I do that better? Any tips on how I can do that better? I mean, how you react to that feedback is so important. I know that sometimes when I've been in bad situations, and I will sit and I will write myself a note, because I know that if I go out and I say what I'm really thinking, I'm going to get myself in trouble every time. So it's really good on, even if you're receiving that negative feedback and you're thinking about, gosh, I want to say X, go back, think about it, write down what you might really want to say, and then come back with, what you should be saying, right? Calmer heads generally prevail.
Speaks a lot to preparing. I love that.
There really is. And as leaders, and we've talked about this before, but the higher up you are in an organization, the more the feedback is filtered. Yeah. And so, you don't get feedback as much, which is really a shame, because we all need that. So another way is to, and this sort of paves the way for feedback, but is to ask, when I meet with my one-on-ones, direct reports, I always say, let's talk about this last meeting, or let's talk about what went down with this group. What could I have done differently to have made that a better outcome? So you're putting yourself out there, asking for the feedback, and that's scary, and you feel pretty vulnerable, but it gives people permission to give you feedback, and they're usually pretty kind about it, but not always, especially at home.
Right. Seems so.
Yeah. But we have to be receptive to feedback and ask for that as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Good point.
I think we often say you have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. I'm sure you said that in earlier episodes, but we really need to do that. And it's okay. And when we show that vulnerability, that's okay too.
Right. Love it. So throughout this 3-part series, feedback being a very important piece, it sounds like collaboration is a set of skills, right? We talked about empathy in a previous episode. We talked about, embracing the silence. We've talked about psychological safety. Now we're talking about giving and receiving feedback, both positive and negative. So it sounds like a set of skills. So is that something that can be practiced or learned?
Yeah, I think it's a really great question, because so often we focus on the technical.
Mm-hmm.
And leadership is really about leading people. I mean, how many managers have you heard say, this job wouldn't be so bad if I didn't have to manage people? It's hard work. It really is.
Yeah.
And so I think, especially in healthcare, we'll take an excellent clinician and put him in a leadership role, and we don't help them learn the skills that you need in relationships. And that is a very important leadership competency, or set of competencies that can be learned, should be practiced, and we can continue to improve on those skills throughout our careers and lifetime. So yeah, we can all do it. I'm if you're uncomfortable with it, and some people are, or with different aspects of it, there's no excuse. You still need to learn the skills and practice it. It's important.
For both positive and negative.
Yes, exactly. And I think quite often people will say, I just don't have time for that.
Right.
That's something, I'll do later. Or the worst kind of feedback is when you have you're giving a review and you have the other person fill out that review for you. And then you go, oh, that's a really good review. Yeah, here you go. Without positive feedback, I mean, so you do need to get comfortable. You do need to practice, and you got to find the time.
Excellent. Anything else you'd like to add on collaboration?
Just one thing that I think is an important component of all of this is we all have strengths that we bring to the team, and so often we focus on our deficits, and we need to spend way more time focused on our strengths and making them even stronger, because that's where we find our joy, and that's what our teammates see. So while we've talked about practicing these skills are very important, practice them in a way where you can continue to increase your strengths, not just improve your deficits, and it makes it way more enjoyable.
Well said.
Amen.
That's amen. There you go. Okay. Well, thank you so much, both of you, for participating in this series as our subject matter experts. It's great content, and you shared it in such a way that we felt supported, and there was lots of joy, and you have great expertise, and do more of that. No, I'm just trying to get positive feedback.
Yes.
So we're wrapping up this series on collaboration skills. And hopefully you've enjoyed it. Thank you again for joining us, Kathy and Bridget. We really appreciate it. And please check out the other courses and podcasts on elitelearning.com. There's a lot of information and a lot of great stuff to learn there for you as you advance through your career. This is Leanna McGuire for Elite Learning by Calibri Healthcare.
This podcast featured content from an accredited CE activity provided by Calibri Healthcare. Visit elitelearning.com/podcasts for accreditation and disclosure statements and instructions on how you may be able to earn CE credits. Take your learning to the next level by subscribing to more podcasts on compelling healthcare topics.